Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with Ike Eisenmann, and today we are thrilled to welcome a Jill of all trades. She's an actor, producer, voiceover artist, acting coach, jewelry designer for her line The Flying Goddess, makeup artist, owns her own PR company, Media Hound, and author of the fascinating book, David Carradine, The Eye of My Tornado. Please help us welcome Marina Anderson. Marina, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, nice to meet you guys.
Well, you've done basically everything, and I was looking at your bio.
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
We're going to try to cover as much as we can, and your story really is a credit to a lot of the things that you've overcome. But I do want to start with you grew up in a showbiz family. Your mother has been a contract singer with Warner Brothers, and your dad later was a Disney Imagineer.
Yes, I see your Disney in the background there.
Well, Ike's Mr. Disney. Ike's grew up in performing Disney stuff.
It was one of the reasons why my mom, contract singer to Warner Brothers. I mean, she had a voice beyond Beverly Hills, to raise a family, mother, wife, Helmer, and but anyway, Warner Brothers, and of course David did the series Kung Fu at Warner Brothers, and so I had that connection. So I was kind of like a little tribute to my mom too by doing that, and of course she was there for the wedding, and it was pretty nostalgic.
And you were related.
Your dad worked.
Oh, sorry.
Well, my dad started off in design, and then he got into aerospace engineering, design engineering, and then he retired out. But finances were difficult in those days too. And so he got a job working for Disney, Epcot. Wow. And that was the last job he had, and it was his favorite. And so he helped design the Journey into Imagination ride.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's a favorite with my step grandkids for sure.
I never got out there to see it when they did. My mom and my dad. The ride was closed, and so you never saw the whole thing. As it was.
I love the ride too.
Yeah,
wow.
But I have a picture of him with the Elliot character here. So
yeah, yeah. And you were related to Peter O'Toole?
Yeah, that's kind of a complicated one. Harry Joe Brown produced Randolph Scott Westerns. That was my granduncle. So his son, Harry Joe Brown Jr., Coco, married Karen, and they had Morgan, and then they separated off, and Karen went off and hooked up with Peter O'Toole, and they had a son, Lorcan. So I'm related to Lorcan and Peter O'Toole through. And the funny thing is, it was Oscars week, and it was the Four Seasons for a meeting, and he was there in the lobby. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got to say, we're related, right? So I walked up to him and I said, I'm a cousin of yours. And he was like, hello. And so I sat down and talked with him for about 10 minutes. He was so delightful. I mean, one of my all-time favorite movies was My Favorite Year. So we talked about that. He was just ever so charming. So we kept in touch a little bit after that. But so I'm still in touch with Lorcan and Morgan, of course.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, it's with all this, it seems like you really had no choice but to pursue a career in show business. And you started so young. What were some of the first things you were involved with?
Well, I also want to add, one of the other cousins on the same side of the family is Ray Evans, and he was the lyricist to Silver Bells, Mona Lisa, Que Sera, Sera. I mean, you name it, Bonanza theme. So, and he 4 Academy Awards on his mantle.
Oh, wow.
So I was over there every New Year's. So there you go.
But no, what were some of the first things you did? Because you did start very young.
I did start very young. In high school, did you see the movie Licorice Pizza by any chance?
Yeah.
I have seen
Yes.
this. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, of
so
course.
there's an agent in there. It was based on Gary Getzman's life, who I knew from high school, and we evidently had the same agent, Mary Grady, and Mary Grady was portrayed in the movie.
Hmm.
And all those things in the valley and everything. It was like, oh
Oh,
yeah, yeah, that was me. Yeah. So it started with Mary Grady, and I was friends with her daughter Lonnie, and then I went to college and played production, and from there on, and branched out into production, and you name it. I got my
well,
start.
before we get to the timeline of the book, before we get to the timeline of the book, you had a few movie credits before then. And I do want to touch on that one. You didn't have a large part in it, but I love Brewster's Millions. I watched
Oh,
it again, since you were coming on. So you had two comedy legends, Richard Pryor and John Candy. Did you get to interact with any of them at all? And what were some experiences there?
well, first of all, Walter Hill is an absolute gem. He wrote me into other
Oh,
films, and one was edited out with Dobie Carey, Harry Carey Jr. So in Brewster's Millions, I saw John Candy a few times as Richard Pryor, and they were so gracious and just really sweet to everybody. Um, they weren't on, they were just very one-to-one, really super nice. That's what I remember about both of them.
Wow.
And it was a great experience. Although even though I was supposed to have separated out lines, the way it was all blocked and everything, I'm literally reaching out of the crowd and yelling my lines at Richard Pryor. That was really an honor to do that, actually, because my dad had just passed away, and he had me audition for a large part, and I blew the audition because my dad had just passed away like 2 days before, and so he said, no, you're talented, I'm putting you in my film. So
Oh.
God bless Walter.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to the book. You had met David Carradine in the 70s on the set of Kung Fu. It was a
Yeah.
quick meeting, but he made an impression on you and stayed in your mind for around
Oh
20
yeah.
years until you met him again.
Yeah. It was quite a destined relationship. So I was taking acting lessons on the Warner Brothers lot, and so they would hold it on sound stages and storefronts and all that kind of stuff. And so we had a break, and I wandered over to a sound stage, and the doors were open, and I see all these candles, and I was like, it was mesmerizing. Like, ooh, what are they doing? Oh, they're prepping for a thing. So I'm standing there, and I felt a presence behind me, and I turned around. It was David in his Shaolin robes and the ball cap and everything. He just was smiling. It was very intimidating. I mean, young actress wannabe at that time. I'm just taking acting lessons, and here's David Carradine, right? So I don't remember exactly what I said to him, but he invited me back. I never went back for whatever reason. Maybe we didn't have a break, or I don't know. But fast forward, I auditioned for, well, he gets more intriguing. Okay, so his wife before me was Gail Jensen. She went to Valley College. She was in the same class as Ed Begley Jr., who is still a dear friend of mine, because I knew him from high school. So our boyfriends, Gail's boyfriend and my boyfriend, were roommates together. So I know. Fast forward back to, was it 1992, 91, right in there. I had a car accident and major concussion, but Michael Sloan, who directed me when I guest starred in Dracula the series, called me in to read for one of the recurring characters. And I'm sitting there in the lobby trying to remember my lines. I'm just like ditzoid, and in blows David through the doors, the sheepskin kind of thing, barefoot. And he's like staring at me. And he said, "You're reading from my show, right?" I went, yeah. And I said, "By the way, I know Gail." "Oh, really?" And I did the lineage and everything. And he goes, I'm going to read with you. Oh my God, I'm just planning to read with the casting director, and here I'm going to read with David Carradine. I was just, I did okay in the audition, but I didn't obviously get the role. And so Michael Sohn called me later. He says, don't worry about it. We'll find you something else, blah, 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 blah. So I went back up to Canada because I was a dual citizen. And I get this call to audition for a guest star role on Kung Fu, The Legend Continues. And I booked it. And so on set is Gail. They're like, oh my God, Marina, Valley College of Mikasa Suka. So I was friends with them, literally just friends. At parties, I would be over their house all the time. And then when their marriage fell apart, I fell in love with David. And I saw a man who was trying to get sober and he couldn't. And I thought I could fix that. I thought I could help him. And lesson learned, you can't fix someone. You just can't do that. So that's historically how that happened. And I guess four of the episodes.
Before we go into the 90s things with him, before we started recording, you had mentioned that you saw the interview we did with Radimus and from Kung Fu, and that he got something a little bit slightly wrong. So I want to hear what that was.
It wasn't so much wrong, but the comment was true that David, there was a little self-destruct in David. And he was like Radimus was correct. He was always pushing the button. He was always going over the limit, testing people's boundaries. That's why I named my book The Eye of My Tornado. He would do little things that cause people to spin around, and he just would just be so amused and have, like enjoy that. So no, he was right about that. But the ending of the series, David always told me, and I think he recounted that in his autobiography, that he did want to branch out. He was tired of the routine kind of a thing. He wanted to be something other than Kwai Chang Caine. So whether he purposely did it or unknowingly did it, yeah, he undid all the good, not all the good stuff, but yeah, he self-sabotaged and it was canceled. So, but for my version of it, he did it on purpose.
Wow. Well, I wouldn't be the first or last story like that I've ever heard. But early on in your relationship with David, you met Quentin Tarantino. Can you tell us about that meeting and how it set things for David to eventually be in Kill Bill?
Well, when I moved in with David in Toronto, we had long talks about trying to get his career revamped because he had a bad reputation. It was a quart and a half of vodka a day. Oof. It was very well known. I mean, he was out in the press. They called him Glasshopper in Toronto because he went to see was it the Stones? Anyway, he was backstage and they wouldn't let him through and he was inebriated. And so he pushed a door a little too hard with his foot, like did a kung fu move, and the glass shattered. Hit the press. It was a whole big thing. And so he was known in Toronto as Glasshopper. So we knew I had some damage control to do. And so I thought, I can do this. I can help this man. I love him. And yeah. So that was kind of our mission. So we were talking about how Quentin resurrected careers. So the Toronto Film Festival rolls around and we're at the Bistro 990 upstairs at a huge party. Drew Barrymore was there and he knew Drew from family ties and the Barrymores, and they were chatting and in walks Quentin. And I said, David, there's Quentin. And he was just, stunned. And I said, we gotta go talk to him. We gotta, and he said, I'm not going over there. I said, no, we gotta make the connection. I mean, you gotta. He said, no, I can't, no. And I said, well, if you're not gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. So I walked across the room, and he was engaged in a conversation, blah, 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 blah. And I kind of stood there for a while, waiting for a break, and he wasn't really stopping. And so I kind of went like this, and he said, yes. And I said, my boyfriend is a major fan of yours. I was hoping to introduce you to him. And he said, oh, really? And he's like looking me up and down like, who are you? And he said, my boyfriend's David Carradine. And he's like bug-eyed, and he goes, you're kidding, I saw him when I walked in. I was too intimidated to go over to him. And I said, would you like to meet him? And he goes, yeah. And so I literally took his hand and walked him over to David. And it was like a 20-minute love fest. Quentin knew Americana, the film David had directed, produced, Barbara Hershey. And he knew the lines from the movie, and they were just two peas in a pod. And but at that time, Quentin said to David, he goes, man, I would love to work with you, but your reputation, man, it's like,
He did come out and say that. He just said that flat out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And David didn't really respond that much. And he goes, well, and here's my PR stuff. I said, he hits his marks. He knows his lines. That's where Rodimus is also correct, because he had a photographic memory. He always hit his marks, always hit his lines, everything. Totally professional in that sense. But he was late to set, and he was drinking, and it did cause some problems. But I did the PR thing to Quentin that, you can count on him and blah, 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 blah. And you could tell he was dubious. And I said, what are you doing for lunch tomorrow? And he was like, why? I said, would you like to have lunch with us tomorrow at the Sutton? And he goes, yes. So we set up lunch. He brought Adam Agoyan with him. And I said to David, this is your chance to prove that you're just all together and you're not going to be slobbering drunk or anything. This is like show. And so that's 2 hours. And they had a piano there, and try to get David away from piano, impossible. So he was serenaded Quentin, and it was quite a concert. And Quentin was so impressed, but he still had that hesitation. And but it was a really good meeting, and he still said he really would want to work with David one day. So after that, I said, okay, we're on a mission. You got to get sober. We're gonna do this. And I had a lot of psychic friends. I still do, and they told me, they said, he's gonna work with Quentin one day. You can count on it. You can, yeah. So, and David's going, yeah, right. Fast forward, we're in California. He was now sober. I'm getting more interviews for him, more bookings for him, because I was doing the management agent thing, because he couldn't get an agent at the time because of the reputation. So I was doing everything. I put my career on hold. I mean, I was doing national commercials and other guest star stuff in Toronto, and come back to LA, and it's like, no, this is a team. I'm on the warpath, and I've got to mend this. And so we did. And so for the next 6 years, that was constantly emails or calls. Hey, David's done this, and he's still sober, and blah, blah. So David's stepbrother, Michael Bowen, did a movie with Quentin. Was it Jackie Brown? If you look at IMDb, and there was a party, the cast party for it, and of course Quentin's there, and he comes over to schmooze with David, and David is being really kind of aloof and a little pissy, and it's because he didn't get cast in the movie, and he had known that David was sober, so David was now pissed off that he didn't get that opportunity for that movie. And so he walked away to get a Coca-Cola. And Quentin says, is David angry at me? What did I do? What did I say? Did I say something? And I told him why. He goes, oh my God. Okay. And then by that time, David was back, and he goes, David, no. I don't want to find any movie for you. I want to find the movie. And he eventually did. So that's the story.
Well, something that you just said resonated with me. reading the book was both parts like engrossing and also frustrating for the reader on your behalf. I mean, that's what, so you really laid yourself bare in there, and you put most
Literally.
of your, yeah, you did, you really did. And you put your life on hold basically to further David's. So how
Yeah.
much did that bother you at the time though?
At the time, it didn't. I did a fair share of indie films, but I lost out on TV because we were constantly traveling and it was too good of a turnaround, blah, 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 blah. Um, it was for us. I thought we were building a future together and that it would help me in the long run because when in Toronto, I stopped getting interviews. As soon as production casting, the entities out there knew that I had moved in with David, I believe I lost credibility because my interviews stopped. So I knew I had to repair that for me too, to get that credibility back, as well as David, because guilt by association. So, yeah, it pinched. It even pinched more later on when we were separated, and all those years building up for this thing to get him on an A-list again. And he did with Quentin, but we were going through the divorce and I got left in the dust. That
Yeah,
that hurt for years. Yeah, that hurt for years, including financially.
yeah, we're going to discuss that. We're going to ask about that. Yeah, there's a lot of this book that showcases the things that you went through and how you overcame them. I mean, you had a terrible experience at the hands of a family member as a child. After David, you were left with nothing, and really, and your whole life has just been about perseverance, really. And so, what made you
Yeah.
decide to write this book?
When we were together, I was writing notes and, of course, letters to him and stuff like that. And I just compiled them and put them in a file because it was therapeutic for me. And I would talk to very close friends, and they said, "This is, you should write your book. This is good for a book. You can help other people." And I, thought about it, and then it was like I was channeling something. Somebody up there was channeling through me. I literally wrote the book in 6 months, and everything seemed to be choreographed. I couldn't have tried to do it. I mean, I do think it was divine guidance to write all this, and there was a lot of healing to do. Part of my mission in my healing with my uncle, with that abuse, I thought was to help David because of those matters involving David. And then I realized, no, that's not, I can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? So often when people credit me, "Oh, you got him sober." No, I didn't get him sober. I acted as an incentive. So for people who, and I went to a lot of Al-Anon meetings and stuff, I realized it's like, that's really out of my hands. It really is to someone upstairs. And the person wanting to do it enough to really do the work. And he did to an extent, and then he stopped. And when he stopped is when I realized I'm getting healthier, but he doesn't want to. And I can't deal with that anymore. And so we grew further apart, and then the break in the marriage and divorce. Yeah.
Well,
And I was still in love with him, but it was destroying me soul-wise, physically. I mean, I was burned out. And it was a matter of my entire survival, I felt. So I filed for divorce. And although he thought he was on the upper hand, because when I went to Toronto for a meeting, I got a call from the pet sitters because he wasn't responsible enough to feed and water the dogs. And so the pet sitters called me and said, "We don't understand what's going on. There's boxes everywhere. Is David moving out?" I went, "What?" So I called, and over the phone, I was on my way to lunch with Mark Breslin, who owns Yuck Yucks in Toronto, dear friend. And I called the house. He answered, and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I'm moving out." I said, and you weren't going to tell me? No discussion. What? I had a meltdown in the middle of a lobby of the hotel. I sat on the floor literally, and I had hysterics. And he said, this is why I didn't want to tell you because you're crying. And I'm like, what do you expect me to, you're just like, what? So anyway, that evening was a big event at one of their big department stores, which escapes me because I'm on PTSD right now. But Jane Seymour and her husband at the time, James Keach, were there. She was the big celebrity guest there. And so I pulled myself together. I thought, I'm not going to let this, I'll deal with it when I get back. And so I went to the event, all I needed to keep the makeup on, and said hello to Jane. She was in the middle of her interviews, and James pulled me aside. He goes, what's wrong? And I told him, and he goes, okay, what is it that you want in your life? What does Marina want? And he just really helped recenter me. So I flew back early, and I pulled myself together, and David was asleep in the bed. There were still boxes. The movers had come, but he didn't answer the door because he was like zonked out. And I'm tapping him on his chest, and he's waking up. Get your stuff and get out. Get the rest of the stuff and get out. You want out, go. And the rest of the movers came later. He moved out, and there was still some stuff in the closet. And he goes, I'm going to leave this there. Is that okay? Why? You want out? Go. No, you take your stuff. Why am I going to have that in the closet? Well, and in case I come back to visit. So he would do things like that. And I'm like, no, you want out? Go. And there was just this little boy side to him that was so endearing. And your heart goes out to him, and it did. That's what part of what I fell in love with. But at the same time, man up, you want out, go. And so I held to it, and then he got involved with somebody else, and I went, that's it. I'm not gonna. He wanted me still to manage his career, and I went, no, can't, no, won't do, no. So that was it.
Well, at the end, David had been found in the hotel room. And almost immediately, you didn't buy the narrative, like by the authorities, and you all launched your own investigation into death. And so you believe that there was foul play involved?
Yeah. Although the elements of it held true, you go, okay, well, that sounds right. For him to fly solo, is how I put it, didn't ring true to me. So I did my own investigation. I was on the phone with Thailand constantly and trying to track things and investigate. And I finally had conversations with the Thai police and the investigators there and the coroners there. I mean, I literally had rolls of toilet paper instead of Kleenex because it was nonstop. Emotional, it was the most horrendous thing I put myself through, but I felt compelled to get to the truth of what happened. And in the autopsy report that I finally got, it was included with some other paperwork. There was something in there that I was like, well, nobody's commented on this. That doesn't, So there's a certain, auto asphyxiation act, or if you choke somebody, it's kind of for the high. You don't go for the kill. And so I thought, I gotta research this. So I called the coroner's office, and they wouldn't talk to me. So I thought, because I'm, was the ex-wife and not a related, whatever. And so I thought, So I called back, did a different voice, and said I was a writer for a TV show, and I'm writing a scene, and I want to get this accurate. So then they opened up to me. So I said, if I had this in a scene, this thing in the autopsy report, would this mean that it was like happened by accident that the person died, or would you say that it was like on purpose with intent to kill? And they said intent to kill. So I was like, my hunch is right. So there's different theories that I had that I wrote about in the updated version, especially in my book, of what could have happened. I mean, there are nefarious, theories that came from other people to me and who I met by accident. They said, oh yeah, David came in. I was a waiter at this restaurant in Chatsworth, and he came in with 6 very young Asian girls. This was like 2 months before he went to Thailand. And, I didn't wait on them, but my friend did. And he was in a really morose mood, like really bad mood. And they ate and left, and he didn't even tip. And I was like, whoa, David always tipped, and he always tipped very well. Even when we stayed at hotels, he would always leave his change or something, an extra at the room. I thought that is totally out of character for him. And what he's doing with 6 Asian girls, really super young Asian girls in Chatsworth at the time. I don't know about now, but it was known as the porn capital of Southern California. So you go, what? Just weird things like that. And you go, wow, that's odd. And then 2 months later, he's in Thailand. So odd things like that. So I wrote about a lot of the theories in the book.
I look forward to the updated version too. But I want to ask, as we mentioned, after your divorce, you really had to rebuild yourself. And to your credit, you did. You started Media Hound PR. Can you tell us a little bit about your company and how you started it to begin with?
A good friend of mine, I was desperately looking for work. I actually, to get my insurance and to pay the bills, I took to doing stand-in and background work, because a lot of my friends were doing it and for the insurance and paying the bills. And I thought, what the heck? So I had a beautiful colleague. She was Lulu, daughter to Lassie 8, the Lassie. So she was his daughter from the same litter as Lassie 9. And I thought, I could put her to work. So she became a Ralph Lauren model. I put her to work. She appeared in movies and TV. She was a regular on Desperate Housewives. They called her the Wisteria Lane Collie. And I was part of that group. So they really were hiring me. They were hiring her, and I'm on the end of the leash, right? Most fabulous, I had the best experiences doing background, and the wonderful people. I'm still dear friends to this day. I blessed that opportunity. And so I started off doing that. And then gradually I, got another agent and started doing other things. So so it led to my friend calling me and said, look, apply to this job. There's a PR company in Beverly Hills. And I did. Met them, they hired me. I affectionately call them the snake pit, but I won't say who it is. In fact, I don't even think they exist anymore. But it was quite an experience, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna do it myself. One of my clients there was Alan Parsons. He was on my roster of like 20 people I had to handle. That was on overload. And so his music manager at the time, no longer, but called me up and said, hey, I'd like to hire you to help us out with Alan's promotions. And I went, yeah. So I started my company. And I'm still dear friends with Alan and his wife. They're just the best people. And incredible 8-year run with Alan. I'm still his personal publicist, but he's got other things handled with record companies and everything. But I go to the concerts. So we started with Alan, and then Frank Stallone, Donnie Most, Robbie Benson. I handled Ed Begley Jr. for a while. I mean, it just really lovely list. And then eclectic. A contractor, building construction group, Scott Hamilton Harris, worked with him for 6 years, built his branding. Psychics, I have 5 psychic clients, Michael Bodine, Sloan Bella, Weiss Kelly, astrologer, you name it. So it's been quite an experience, but it's off and on, it's not because people's what they need or what they don't need at the time. So it fluctuates. So I went back to acting coaching at a school in Santa Clarita School of Performing Arts. And turns out I worked with the owner of it in Beverly Hills when I coached for a while. And I was like, oh my God, this is your school? Oh, whoa. So I started teaching at the school. And I do a lot of that now in kids. It's just, I love it. Yeah.
Well, you're also involved in producing. And so what kind of projects do you gravitate towards?
Well, they were basically film shorts, what I did. That was a while ago. I'm trying to put my, I thought I had a shopping deal with the company, but I can't comment on that. Let's just say it's not going according to what's in the paper. So I'm putting it out there because I think the love story that we had, oh, by the way, when he passed away, it sounds gross, but in the autopsy picture, he's wearing a wedding ring. And it's actually a duplicate of our wedding ring. Because I think when we separated, he probably tossed it. But when I ran into him a few years later, he had it on his hand and I was like, what? So yeah, and from what I heard from other people and mutual friends is that we were still in love with each other. And that was hard for him. He went back to drinking after we separated too. And I think that's why he probably didn't go on to other films. They were always more indie films versus A-list films. He never did another A-list film after Kill Bill. And I felt bad about that because he chose to go back down the other road again. Yeah.
Do you want to ask about your jewelry line, the Flying Goddess? Can you tell us about that and how can people purchase?
Oh gosh, I put it on limited edition. I was selling it on Etsy, so I'm just selling out the stock on it. The way things have changed with marketing and everything, it's like I originally designed it to empower myself during the divorce. It's a Flying Goddess, and it comes with an affirmation. It's women are all goddesses. We're born that way. Just remember your inner power gives you wings to fly. And it was the front, a very graceful nude, and then on the back, the backside. So very kind of cheeky jewelry. And then I came out with the Flying Adonis that was also very popular, and I'm out of stock on that. And my manufacturer kind of went rogue and is no longer. So to get it back together would be a major endeavor. So I'm just selling out the rest of the stock. But I also had the love note, which is a note with a little love at the end of a little heart at the end of it. So cute stuff, but it's just to keep me creatively busy, you know, because this business, it's a hectic business and I do need that outlet.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. It's an understatement.
Yeah.
What are you working on next?
I just did a really just heartwarming project, a film short for a company called Cinemagic. And I play a high school teacher that is really trying to connect with her students and is really frustrated because she doesn't feel she is. And at the end, it's just like a, you know. And so what they do is this was actually filmed at Hawthorne High School in LA. And they cast, I think, about 20 of the students at the high school to be in the film. And so they give them the opportunity to work with crew, be in the film. And the crew is explaining how things work and what they do. And they're going to have a premiere for it in June. And it's just this wonderful organization that brings opportunity to areas that don't ordinarily have it. And they're originally out of Ireland.
Oh.
So they've branched out. So I'm really just feel so grateful to be a part of that whole project. And Andrew Molina directed it, and he's wonderful to work with. So yeah, so that was just happened a couple weeks ago.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Well,
nice to be back.
as I said before, you really are a model of perseverance and also of balancing bouncing back from negative things happening. So is there any message or advice that you can give to others going through a rough time?
Hang in there. What helped me, and I have severe PTSD, and I never got proper help with it. I always turned to my spiritualist friends, guides, I call them. I take this more spiritual side, is that there's a bigger picture to why you're going through something. And I mean, what's the lesson to learn with this? But imagination creates reality. It's all vibrational, it's my belief. And if you keep tuning into a lower vibration, you're going to stay stuck in there. So they say, reach for the stars, literally raise your vibration up to what you want, how you see yourself, what you really want. And sometimes things have to fall away that hurt, that might be holding you back. But if that's what your goal is, just to keep believing and feel like you have it. I am healthy. I am successful. Like you already have it. That's advice.
I want to really thank you so much for coming on today. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. I thought it was great. I recommend everyone getting it. Fascinating. A lot of really fascinating. Like we said before, I mean, you really put yourself out there in this book. So I really recommend everyone reading it. But it was a pleasure getting to talk to you.
Pleasure to talk to you both. Thank you so much. Enjoyed it.
Well, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Ike Eisenmann. And again, a very special thanks to Marina Anderson. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.